History of the Forerunners. Roughly 15 million years ago, the Precursors created the Forerunners by seeding the planet of Gibob, which resides in the Orion complex. The Forerunners used this world to serve as a hub for their interstellar civilizations, with 12 systems total, until one day, the world was laid to waste by an astro-engineering disaster that caused a series of supernova, resulting in the near extinction of their race. The Forerunners quickly became the most advanced species in the galaxy, overtaking the competition. At the feet of their creators, the Precursors, the Forerunners mastered new arts and strange sciences that would make them worthy of holding the mantle. A Precursor ideology that insists that the most evolved species in the galaxy are meant to oversee the protection and cultivation of life. There are, on the other hand, records of the Forerunners achieving interstellar travel on their own 10 million years earlier. Regardless, the Forerunners had built a massive empire, conquering worlds through wars won. Around 107-445 BCE, the Forerunners went to war with the species that evolved alongside them, humanity. They perceived humanity as an invasive threat. They believed humanity resented the Forerunners' expansionism during a period where the human population grew rapidly. Once the war was won, a small number of Forerunners discovered the truth. Humans weren't invading after all. They were in fact fleeing the extragalactic parasite known as the Flood. Desperate to seek new refuge, far from infection, humanity invaded worlds of other civilizations, bringing them face to face with the Forerunners, who saw themselves as protectors of the mantle. The Forerunners wiped the galaxy clean of all traces of human civilization. As punishment, the Forerunners devolved humanity and exiled them to their former homeworld Ed Tyrene, also known as Earth, and forced them to begin anew. Thanks to humanity's military efforts, they managed to push the Flood beyond the edge of the galaxy. Humanity's parting gift was allowing the Forerunners time. They used this time to create an array of galaxy-cleansing superweapons designed to starve the Flood to death by killing all sentient life with enough biomass to sustain them. The conservation measure was implemented after concerns of a proposal of mass genocide were brought up by the Didact's wife, the librarian. However, the Forerunners executed and exiled supporters of the Didact's plan. This threw off the warrior-to-servant ratio and forced the Forerunners to disband armies to oversee builder security. This left them ill-prepared for the Flood's arrival. Roughly 9,000 years after the war with the humans, a Forerunner survey team made contact with the Flood on planet Seaward. Believing the principle of the mantle forbade them from destroying any form of life, the Forerunners made an attempt to contain the Flood. Using methods more akin to disease control instead of all-out warfare, the Forerunners' attempt at containment was a failure. Once they had realized their failure, they were left with no choice. The galaxy was now in a state of war. Forerunner conventional naval tactics were ineffective. As such, they studied the Flood looking for exploitable weaknesses, all while simultaneously developing new weapons and tactics. The Sentinels were deployed. They even began enacting premature collapse to stars in compromised solar systems, causing supernova to engulf the world in its entirety. In the end, these tactics proved not only too slow, but failed to halt Flood expansion. Reluctant to use the Halo array, believing they should continue to embrace the mantle rather than destroy it, this led to debate and eventually civil war. After nearly 300 long years of seemingly stalemated conflict with the Flood, the war quickly tipped in the Flood's favor as the Gravemind managed to convince Mendicant Bias, the AI in charge of the Forerunners' defense, to unite with him. Vowing never to allow another one of their creations betray them, the Precursors now aim their vengeance at all life forms. But this isn't so for all Precursors, as some chose to die on a planet in Path Cathona, where a few Forerunners who refused to participate in the genocide of their creators were exiled. These exiled Forerunners attempted to save the two Precursors, but the pair decided to perish alongside their species. 10 million years after the genocide of the Precursors, humanity comes across the Precursor powder, which eventually would bring about the rise of the Flood. At first, humanity was the Flood's primary target. Eventually leaving the galaxy, the Flood left some humans go uninfected, leaving room for hope of a cure, misdirecting humanity's efforts for its next assault. The humans discovered an ancient being at the edge of the galaxy, whom later they named the Primordial, who claims to be the last remaining precursor who mutated to survive for eons. They transported the primordial to their capital world and found out how to communicate with it. When questioned by the human scientists, the primordial's response horrified them so much that it drove many of them to suicide. Roughly 10,000 years later, the Isodidact questioned the primordial on the fate of the precursors and the precursors' relationship with the flood, receiving only vague answers. The Isodidact, enraged, executed the primordial using an accelerating chronological field, allowing for billions of years to pass within it in just a few moments. The primordial, in its last moments, stated that dying this way only adds to the sweetness of life's struggles, asserting all life would eventually succumb to the flood in the end. Just before the primordial perished, he transferred his memories over to the flood's compound mind, later called Gravemind. This was discovered by Didact. However, even Gravemind was unable to fully access or comprehend the wisdom once beheld by the precursors. In the war between the Forerunners and Gravemind, the Forerunners created weapons known as the Halo Arrays, ring-shaped superweapons designed to destroy all biological life. Simple organisms without neurosystems were unaffected along with structures. However, precursor tech is particularly susceptible due to quasi-living neurophysics. The activation of the Halo Arrays as a final stand against the Flood would then in turn destroy the domain. The Forerunners unwittingly destroyed all history and cultural heritage. A Forerunner named the Librarian referred to this as killing their own soul. And though firing the Halo Array seemingly quelled the Flood, it also took most of the Forerunners with them. Through Gravemind, the precursors were able to achieve their goal, punishing the Forerunners using the Flood as their tool. Over a century later, the former Isodidact, now known as Born Stellar, viewed a message from the Librarian which told of the Gravemind's final revelation, being the intentional destruction of the domain, and requested the regeneration of the domain to deprive the Gravemind of his perceived victory. In the end, the Forerunners did deserve the mantle. Thanks to the actions of the Librarian, who saved and cultivated humanity, thanks to the Librarian, the history of the Forerunners won't be forgotten, and the mantle of responsibility lies safely in the hands of humanity.